Welcome to the Aaron Warner podcast on iCode Media. Today I sit down with Taylor Mendelson, who helped teach a NCLE preparation course with me at the Vision Source Exchange. We have a great conversation. Her passion is palpable. So if you're a doctor with a team, if you're a staff member who is considering what's next for me, or even just want to know more about NCLE certification and what that is, you're going to enjoy this conversation. Please share with a friend, subscribe, give us a nice 5-star review, and of course, support those who support us. Hey everyone, a quick heads up about something I'm really excited about. On June 24th, during the AOA meeting, we'll be part of a live interactive event that takes a deep dive into how AI is transforming our practices and our profession. We're calling it the Gateway to the Revolution in Optometry. If you're a doctor, a staff member, somebody in the industry who's wondering how to actually use AI, not just talk about it, this session's for you. We'll cover how to demystify AI, ways to leverage data for better patient care and practice performance, lessons from other industries, and it definitely is a live AI workshop to show you real-world applications. And the best part, the event is free thanks to our partnership with the AOA, but space is limited. So head to gatewaytour.ai to grab your spot. Again, that's gatewaytour.ai. See you there. The Myopia Collective. CooperVision and the AOA have partnered in a groundbreaking initiative to change the way optometrists in the U.S. treat children with myopia. The purpose of the Myopia Collective is to rally the profession of optometry and its allies to interrupt the status quo and elevate the new standard of care for children with myopia. Every individual is encouraged to become a member of the collective. By joining, you commit to taking action to help slow the progression of myopia in children. You'll receive updates and information about the collective and its work in the fight against myopia, gain access to educational opportunities and resources offered by the collective, and hear from change agents, the ambassador optometrists selected to serve as advocates for community and policy change that facilitates the mission of the collective. Scan the QR code or click on the link in the show notes to join the collective today. In the past, our focus revolved around prescribing MacuHealth or MacuHealth Plus to patients at risk of macular degeneration, while also recommending it to collegiate and professional athletes for enhanced contrast sensitivity in sports performance. However, this year's introduction of the Life Meter has been a game changer. The Life Meter revealed a concerning truth. Many of my patients have alarmingly low skin carotenoid levels, indicating potential deficiencies in essential body tissues like the retina and brain. Supported by over 30 peer-reviewed publications, Life Meter's accuracy, consistency, and effectiveness has been demonstrated across 2,000 subjects with diverse backgrounds. With this newfound insight, I can now have meaningful conversations about carotenoid levels with all of my patients, even those who may seem outwardly healthy. To learn more about this empowering technology, feel free to contact your MacuHealth representative or click on the link in the show notes. Together, let's optimize patient care and elevate their well-being. So Taylor, welcome. It's fun to chat with you again. Last time we were together, you and I shared a classroom teaching the NCLE prep course at the Vision Source Exchange a couple months ago.
Yeah, and that was a lot of fun. I accidentally stole the mic for a little too long sometimes, but
Hey.
but it was a good partnership. Good to chat with everybody and talk about being an NCLE.
Yeah, that was a great group, and you didn't steal the mic. I let you have it. When somebody is just that good and knows their stuff and on a roll, you don't stop them. You just you let the band play, and you did a fantastic job. I was very impressed. It reminded me, quite frankly, of some of the things that I hadn't thought about since optometry school.
That's funny because when I was studying for the test, I had one doctor who was really my mentor helping me through it all, and he sometimes had to take a break and say, wait a minute, I haven't thought about this in several years, and had to kind of refresh himself. So it was interesting to see, I guess, what I was learning as an NCLE versus what ODs hadn't thought about since boards.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we want to jump in and talk about today. What is this NCLE thing? Why is it important? I'm a huge advocate for staff professional development, for everybody professional development, but especially staff. But before we dive in, give everybody a quick rundown on who Taylor is. All
right. So hi, my name is Taylor Mendelson. I am a big advocate for for being an NCLE, for encouraging other staff members to become an NCLE. More than that, as an NCLE, it's a contact lens examiner, so it's not just your primary eye care, but it's specialty eye care. It's myopia management and myopia control. It's everything that goes into patient care when it comes to contact lenses. And it's a really great way to connect with patients on a little bit of a deeper level because, as some of you techs and doctors know, contact lenses are important to patients. Their experience with their contact lens is important, and being able to be a part of that is it's a very rewarding thing to be involved in it more so than a standard technician.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about ABO for staff members in the optical, and it's a big deal. NCLE is that, but on the contact lens side, it stands for National Contact Lens Examiner Exam, and it's not a simple, easy exam.
It's
not. It's a big deal. Yes.
And contrary to what I've heard people think, you actually do not have to be ABO certified to become NCLE certified. So as I started telling people about the NCLE certification, I realized that a lot of people were like, oh, but I have to take my ABO first. You don't. You can be just an NCLE. I'm just an NCLE. And it's a neat thing to do, for sure.
It's very cool. And something we encourage in our practice, I'll throw in some of the stuff what we do in the practice. We encourage our opticians to be ABO certified. And I really think it's important to be a master of whatever craft that you're involved in.
Sure.
We don't do a whole lot of cross-delegation and cross-training in the office because we're big enough that I like my teams to really be in their area to support patients where they're at. So our opticians typically stay in the optical. Our technicians do a lot more of the contact lens work, and an NCLE is one of the first exams in credentialing that we encourage them to get and support them in getting. So starting at the beginning of your journey, how did you get into optometry, and then what really drove you to this NCLE thing?
Optometry was an accident for me, a very, very happy accident. I needed a job. I was in college, finishing up. It was my last year of college, maybe. I just needed a different job than what I was doing at the time. And a family friend was like, hey, I just had an eye exam, and they're looking for technicians. And I was like, that's something different. Sure, let me look into it. So I started just kind of doing it as a college job. And then I was like, wait a minute, this is actually kind of interesting. And what really continued to draw my attention was cool retinal stuff and cool contact lenses. It's like the interesting things. So I was a question asker. I asked so many questions constantly, and ended up being at that practice for a year-ish before I moved on to an ophthalmic practice that was much larger and had a lot more of that cool retinal and cool contact lens stuff. And I did not want it. By that time, I graduated college, didn't know what I wanted to do with that degree. So I said, well, let me just kind of see what I can do with this. And I was an ophthalmic tech for a while there before I moved over into the contact lens department. And they had a super similar setup to what you described as your practice, having the opticians are ABO certified, the technicians are the technicians, the contact lens team is the contact lens team, and that's all you do, and you're highly specialized in that. So I ended up moving over to the contact lens team, and I wanted to go over there. I was talking about going over to the contact lens team for a while before I got moved over. And my manager at the time was NCLE certified. So that kind of helped me continue to, okay, I started as a tech. Now I'm a contact lens technician. Now what's next for me? Becoming NCLE certified. So that's kind of how my progression went, as I was constantly like, okay, I feel like I've mastered this. What's next? And that's kind of what got me to being an NCLE.
Yeah, I like that. And it's, I had a discussion with another colleague for the podcast, Dave Kading, and we talked about emphasis and how doctors, we're taught everything, but we all kind of naturally fall into a niche, something that we like our emphasis on. When something new technology comes out about it, new papers come out about it, we're a little bit more excited to read those than the ones, the everyday ones. And and it makes sense, perfectly logical sense, that everybody on our team would have that too. I've got my team members that when new frame styles come out, they get excited. I'm not one of those. Right? But,
not either.
But when new innovations in contact lenses come out and things like that, then it's a little bit more fun and exciting.
Yeah.
And scratches that itch for me, and it sounds like you're the same way. So your manager told you about NCLE exam, What was the process like from when you first were introduced to it and said, I want to do this, till when you got NCLE certified?
So when I first started in contact lens department, I knew about what your average technician knows about contact lenses. I kind of knew that there was this hard one you sleep in, but then there's a hard one you don't, and then they're in all these different shapes, and like I kind of knew what they were, sort of. I had a very vague idea of what all of these things are, right? So I didn't really pursue an NCLE right away, because I was like, well, before I do that, let's really dive in. Let's make sure that that I get my basics down, that I know kind of what I'm doing and what I'm signing up for the NCLE test, right? I don't want to become certified in something and then be like, oh my gosh, actually, this is not for me. So I spent about a year learning under that manager who'd been working in optical and contact lenses for 10-ish years. So she was a great wealth of knowledge. And then my desk was right next to two doctors' desks, so I bugged them all the time, like, hey, and they knew to come to me if they had like a really interesting contact lens case, and they were like, hey, Taylor, come look at this. So that was really cool. So I spent about a year really immersing myself and talking with these doctors and asking them questions, and like if they had a contact lens patient, a lot of times I was answering the phone when the patient wasn't happy with their contact lens trials they've been sent home with. So learning what are the right questions to ask. If they say this, it's probably this, or that, it's probably that. And by the time that I'd really been like, okay, I've mastered contact lens technician as a craft, I was ready to be able to see patients in the exam room. Because at this point, I could answer the phone, hear their complaint, and think, okay, this is what I think we should probably do, but like, I don't know. And then that's when taking it to the next level as an NCLE, I was like, this is what we need to do. So it gave me a little bit of confidence too as a staff member to be more definitive and like, okay, this is what we're doing for this problem.
Well, I think it's important to do your due diligence like you did.
Yeah.
And, right. Check out, test the waters, make sure it's something you want to invest your time in.
Right.
And it gives you satisfaction. It certainly is frustrating when you can't help somebody fix a problem.
Yeah.
If you're like us, where we're just our life, we're designed to fix problems. We're designed to help, and saying I don't know is tricky. So you decided to start taking it. How long was that the process from studying? How did you study? What was the process through that? And we'll get into what the test was like.
So by the time I decided, yes, I'm going to do this, I went to the head doctor at the practice, who the person who was my mentor the entire time, and told him what I wanted to do, and he said, great, go get certified, and then I'll send you to the myopia management boot camp at Vision by Design. I'm like, and so I did a little bit of mental math, and I was like, 4 months away. Okay, I have 4 months. I do very well on a deadline. That was my personal thing. So I was like, I'm going to that boot camp. You can go ahead and just sign me up because I'll be there. Like I'm gonna do what I need to do to be there. So it was kind of almost like he put this carrot here, and he was like, come and get it. So that's what I did. So I studied for about 3 months because I gave myself a 1 month buffer just in case I didn't pass. So I needed to take it again. So I studied for 3 months, and I crammed. I studied hard. I've talked to other people who were like, yeah, I took my time. I studied for about a year to do it. I went hard. When I woke up in the morning, looking through my notes. When I was on my lunch break, I had the Quizlet app on my phone, and I would just run through because it's something easy I can do. I don't have to be at a desk to do.
Yep.
I was studying every evening. I was calling my mentor up at 6 p.m. Hey, have you started dinner yet? Can I ask you this question really quick? And I spent those 3 months, pretty much all of my free time, really dedicating myself to this test. Because I did not want to fail that test. And then I studied really hard. There's a lot of math and a lot of memorization of different corneal diseases that you have to be able to identify, different issues from contact lenses, different types of contact lenses that were referred to in different terms than what I was used to in the practice. There was a little bit of a difference. So, for example, they called scleral lenses haptic lenses, which gets a giggle out of the people who've been practicing for a long time because nobody calls them haptic lenses anymore. So there was a lot for me to do to really dedicate myself for 3 months. You do not have to dedicate your entire life to it for 3 months like I did. It was a time in my life where it was all about my career. I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. This was the time to do it. So you don't have to do what I did, but that's what I did.
No. Although I like what you said there, and it was really important. I'll call it out. Just having that Quizlet app. When if you've ever had a chance to go and look at your phone and screen time, I know Apple has a screen time. I'm sure. If you're not an Apple person, we one of those silly green bubbles. They've got their version of it, but there's a lot of wasted time staring at our phones. In fact, I sat my teenage daughter down. She was not supposed to have social media, and found that not only had she snuck it, but that last week she was on it for 10 hours. And she looked at me and said, "There's no way I was on it for 10 hours." And I said, "But time just pulls away." Well, that's 10 hours that you could have dedicated
Sneaks up on you.
Something different. Not that I expect a 14-year-old to study for an NCLE exam.
Literally
but I think the time's there is the point. Yeah. The time's there, especially with the digital resources we have and whatnot. I know in the office we buy the books for our teams so they can study, and we make ourselves available to ask questions. We always preface it with, I probably haven't looked at this in 15 to 20 years, but together we'll figure it out if I don't know. And at first, one of my team members said that the math is dumb. Why do I need to know all this math? Right? You guys don't do the math. I don't see you back here. And I said, well, I appreciate that, but when you understand the math, you understand how to control all the different factors you can control. And while most of our stuff gets empirically designed for us now because there's algorithms that can do that, I still have to know what's going on. And while I may not pull out that TI whatever calculator to do the crazy math, in my head I understand the processes, and so I think it's important to know that as well. And it's you may not do it again, but it's important to do it.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing behind the math. I mean, I didn't really touch on the math a whole lot when I was in real life after I'd become NCLE certified. There were a couple of things that I did use though. So, obviously you can type. So, like I said, I worked in an ophthalmic practice, so everything was in plus cylinder. Well, contact lenses are in minus cylinder, so for every single patient, I had to transpose those prescriptions. Our system did not do it for us, so I transposed a lot of prescriptions, but the vertex distance I found, it's kind of like, okay, once you understand the concept of vertex distance and why you're changing it for a patient over a 4 diopter plus or minus, you kind of understand like the optics a little more, which helps you to think on your feet when the patient has a problem. So while you don't know exactly the exact calculation in your head that you're doing, you kind of understand what's going on over here so that you can fix it over here. Even if you're not sitting down with a pen and paper and doing the math. So I concur that's important just to know what's behind the scenes.
Absolutely. And in fact, I just finished reading Jim Collins' How the Mighty Fall, and he talks about different businesses, and that one of his big differences for businesses that maintain success and ones that fall is the idea that the good businesses understand why they're doing something, where the ones that end up falling just know they're good at it because of what they're doing. And I think that relates back to us as healthcare practitioners and healthcare teams. If we understand why we're doing something, it's significantly more powerful, and we can adapt it and customize it a little bit better than if we just know what we're doing. We're no longer following a set recipe.
Yep, exactly. And it helps you with those trickier patients where it's not just a cookie cutter -1 see you later patient, and it takes a little bit more time and effort. Those patients really understanding what is steeper, what is flatter. Oh, this is the patient's experience, but we steepen the lens, so maybe that wasn't the move. Maybe we should increase that. Just little things like that. It's like, okay, what is this issue? How can we fix it? That's the importance of the math of the NCLE. Yep. Not that you're going to use that pen and paper every day, but that you're going to kind of understand contact lenses and optics in a way that you weren't able to understand as a technician.
Yep. And I think that's also important why some of the maybe the older original technologies are still involved in the exam. The question, right? You can't understand where you're at until you've understood kind of where you've been.
Came from.
Yeah, and what got you here. So so I also like the idea that you mentioned that you told your doctors to, hey, if you got anything interesting, come grab me, right? And asked if it was okay that they were questioned.
Yeah.
What's interesting about that, though, is as a doctor, I don't just assume that my team wants to know that kind of stuff. And I think that communication aspect was really important. So anybody who's listening, if you know, whether you're a doctor and you want to get better at a different skill set, or whether you're a team member working for in a practice and you want to gain more, or whether you are listening to this and you have nothing to do with optometry, but whatever your field is, you know, communicate that you want to learn more, communicate you want to engage, because I'm a nerd. I love what I do, and if somebody wants to know more about it, I'm happy to share, but I don't know unless you ask.
Yeah. Well, and the really interesting things too is sometimes I would talk to a patient and they would have XYZ complaint. So I'd go to the first doctor and I'd say, hey, what do you think of this? And then they'd kind of tell me what they think. And I'm like, okay. And they go to the second doctor. Hey, what do you think of this? And I see what they all say, because it's not always the same. The doctors I worked with graduated at least 10 years apart, ballpark, different ages, but they were all different ages, different preferences for like what they do, right? Some people are really drawn to dry eyes, some people are really drawn to contacts. So it's interesting to see what they all said, and they would all come and get me for these things because they knew if I found out they had something cool and they didn't get me, they knew. And so I've joined the industry side now, and what's funny is I have a doctor that I'll go see, and sometimes they're like, hey, I saw something really cool on a retina. You want to see what it is? And of course, doesn't share any patient information with me. It's just a fundus photo. But I'm like, oh my gosh, this is cool. This is really cool. So even the doctors on the industry side of it that I go and visit will share cool stories with me, and I encourage them to.
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
Well, I love to continue to hear it.
Yeah. No, it's neat, and you know, I don't know it all. I wish I did, but the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know, and having a different perspective, having a good contact lens technician who understands it, who challenges and who helps to be part of solving the problems and part of the ideas to how we're going to solve this is really kind of neat, because I learn along through that discussion as well.
Yeah. Well, and in that relationship, I find that, and this was maybe the way it was in the practice I was in, and I'm not sure other practices, but oftentimes, we talked to the contact lens reps and the drop manufacturers and the solution manufacturers. We sometimes knew little stuff that, like, there was not really a need for us to immediately go and tell the doctor, but the doctor might say something. I'm like, hey, you know what? I actually heard, or hey, that's funny that you say that, because I've actually had 2 patients call and say. And so sometimes we have different information over here that we don't think to escalate up until we all start to communicate that same information. So that's part of what makes the teamwork of it great, because we each have different experiences in the practice, and when you can bring them together, that's when it can become really powerful for your practice.
Yep. I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Let's jump back to the test. And the day the test comes, and you take the test and you pass. But what was that day like? Because as a doctor, my whole life is taking tests and standardized tests. So it wouldn't be it'd be nervous, but not a crazy big new world. But I can imagine that somebody that completed just a little bit of school out of high school, or didn't, that might be later in their career, that might be a little bit of an intimidating environment.
Yes, for somebody, but I had just graduated college couple of months before I took my test, and I was still shaking that morning. So somebody who's had all the standardized experience, somebody who hasn't had it, it's a different experience. And here's the reason, right? When you go into a college, a room to take a test, there's 50 other people around you, and you're kind of all doing the same thing. And even, I had a couple of my tests that were online. You're proctored, but like somebody's you don't even see their face, right? You don't know anything about them, and you're in the comfort of your own home. What I did not expect was to walk into a room, have my arms out, legs out. I was wearing leggings and a long sleeve t-shirt. They made me lift my leggings at my ankles, show them that there was nothing in my socks. I had to lift my shirt. Like they patted me down. They did the scan. I mean, they really make sure that you would have thought that I was taking a much more serious test, to some sort of FBI test, but they really pat you down. And so I didn't expect that. So that would be one thing that I would just warn people, because I was like, what in the world? They take your phone away. And then you're put into a room where everybody's taking different tests. Somebody might be taking a test to be, a financial banker, next to somebody who's taking a test to get some sort of commercial licensing. Nobody in there is taking the same test for the same thing. So you're kind of just sat there around people who are clicking or maybe not, or typing, all kinds of things. And then I went through all the questions, and I was like, I for a second forgot English. So so I read all the questions. I was like, I've never heard of these words in my life. What is this? And I clicked through about half the questions, and I was like, no, you just need to breathe, Taylor. So I went back, and I was like, oh, wait, I do know this answer. Okay, I do know this. So I built myself up, and then you just need to take a deep breath. You know the answers, and then you find out right there whether you pass or not. So they tell you before you leave whether you pass or not. It pops up on the screen.
Cool.
The NCLE is a pass-fail. They don't say you got 75% correct, so you passed or failed or whatever. It's
yes,
pass-fail.
no. Yep.
Yeah. And then later you'll get an email that will, it's not numbered, but it just kind of tells you where you did, whether you did like green is really good, yellow is meh, red's not so hot on a particular topic. So it can tell you like, hey, I didn't do so well maybe on this, maybe I should brush up on that before I start seeing patients. Or so that was the actual day of the test.
Nice.
I did a little whoop when I walked out of the silent testing room. I was like, oh my God. Ooh, like I was kind of heavy breathing because I was so nervous, but I passed and I was so excited, and I couldn't get to my phone fast enough to text everyone I knew. And then I had to go to work later that day because I took the morning to go take the test, and I don't think I could really work that day because I was just so excited.
So happy. Well, I'll tell you, one of the most exciting things for that I've had when my staff does it is being able to hit send on the new business card reorder forms, because now you've got letters after your name.
Oh, yeah.
Right? We need to get rid of our old business cards and bring in some new ones.
I very quickly changed my email signature so that every email I sent, they knew I was an NCLE.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for that.
And it's a big deal. It's a lot of work to do. It's a tough test. And it really indicates that you've put the time and effort in to gain that skill set. And it's not a one-time thing, because just like doctors need to take so many hours of continuing education to maintain that, the same is true for NCLE.
Yeah. So you do continued education, and you find different areas, different resources where you can do those continued educations. You have to get so many credits per year, or you have a 3-year period. So you have 3 years to do X amount of C. And it's not a crazy amount of Cs. I mean, it's definitely it's definitely less than what you have to do on an annual basis. It's really not too many. It's just remembering to stay on top of it. Like mine will be due at the end of this year, so I'm like, okay, I gotta get on that.
No, and if it's something that you love doing, it's less work to do it, right? You're excited about learning about it, and excited about hearing what's new. And sometimes the events can be a little bit fun because you get to engage with other colleagues and hear what they're doing. And if you really get into it, you can get to the point, just like on the COPE side for the doctors, where you share some of your expertise and you give some of the lectures and share your knowledge doing it, which is pretty neat. Did it change once you got your NCLE certification, did it change how you viewed showing up to work every day?
Definitely. Definitely. Well, like anything new, right? Because it wasn't just my title that changed for me. Once I became an NCLE, my job changed. It wasn't just, okay, you're an NCLE, great, keep doing the same old. The doors opened for me to experience more. The doors opened for me to learn more and be a little bit more hands-on. So pretty much as soon as I got my NCLE, I started shadowing the NCLE that was currently there. That was my manager at the time. She had her own schedule of patients, and she would do contact lens fits, contact lens follow-up. She would do all these things. She was showing me what goes into charting, what kind of things you need to put in the chart, which I'd already had some experience with as a technician, but it's just knowing a different side of it. It really is a different side of it. So being the person that I am, who I really like I want more, I want to learn more, I want to do more, that was really fun for me. And it changed my job, and it made every day a little bit different because every patient's a little different. So it really opened the doors for me to do something different. I was excited. I loved it.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, it's pretty neat. And I will tell you that it was cool to see. Kristen was our first to went through this process years and years ago. It was cool to see her blossom, right? And it was like this really cool I always have bird references, but when you see the peacocks spread their full wings, I'm like, I didn't realize all of that was inside of you. Like, this is pretty neat to see. I will tell you, my ego got hit a little bit because her success rate at fitting multifocals was a whole lot better than mine. Probably because she listened more and followed the guide.
Fitting guide helps.
And understood what she was doing and didn't think they were smarter than it.
Yeah.
But patient experience was significantly higher. They loved the not just the access, but the engagement. And because doctors are nerds, sometimes I think we talk to people a little bit differently, and maybe not in the way they want to have that conversation. And so they looked to come and work with her a whole lot more than they were looking to come and work with us, which was great for her, great for them, great for the practice. It was pretty neat all the way around.
Well, and I think the other side of that is that sometimes patients are a little hesitant to ask doctors things, right? There might be questions where they're like, this feels like a really dumb question. And sometimes they're not comfortable asking you. But because so many of these patients saw me instead of their doctors for their contact lens follow-ups, they were a little bit more comfortable, and it was a little bit more casual for them to be like, this is going to sound dumb, or like, this is going to sound weird, but I just have to ask. And then they'll ask this like weird eye question that they maybe wouldn't have had a chance to talk to the doctor about, or the nerves to talk to the doctor about. So there is a little bit of a different relationship when you're doing just their contact lens care, and you're able to really engage with the patients. But the other side of that, right, is you have a patient call, they have a question about their contacts, or they can't remember, they can't remember the care for their contacts, or whatever it was. Sometimes just being able to answer the question right there instead of saying, okay, let me put you on a brief hold and see if your doctor's available for a chat. Like, it enhances the patient experience when the staff member can answer this technical question, which, not that they can't answer technical questions unless they have an NCLE, but it helps, right? Because you have that more hands-on experience, and you've seen more in the exam rooms. And so it does enhance the patient experience, because, not to say that NCLEs know as much as the doctors, but they're able to answer some of these questions that sometimes standard technicians aren't trained on.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's nothing worse than calling in a customer support or calling with an issue and hearing, let me get my manager, or let me put you on hold.
Right.
And so, you want to talk to somebody who's an expert. You want to talk to somebody who knows what they're working with and can get you the problem. And so, being able to have advanced that far in your career allows that to everybody win. Like I said, you can answer the question right off the bat. Yeah. So I'm curious, because it's not always rainbows and unicorns. So in working with contact lenses and making that kind of your focus, what were some of the challenges that you came across that said, this is tough? This is something that I'm challenged with, or I get frustrated by?
Yeah. The conversation changed when you were a technician talking to the patient versus an NCLE talking to the patient. So you're now solving their problems. So you realize, I think the biggest frustration for me wasn't even something in my control, but it was, I learned that you don't always get the full story from the patient. And I think that was like a challenge for me, because I'm like, this just doesn't make sense. Like, and then I start to put on myself, I'm like, did I something off with the lens? Like, did I put the wrong lens on? Let me check my own, like, what is going on? And so the frustrating part was like maybe problem solving. I think a lot of doctors can relate to this. Like, why isn't this medication working? Oh, because they're not using it, even though they're saying they are, right? Like, it's a similar experience. So that was hard. And then there are some patients who, it doesn't matter how many letters you have, if you're not their doctor, they don't want to listen to you. So there were some patients where I would give them this, I'd say, okay, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I think is really going to help this problem. Well, what does Dr. So-and-so say about that? Yeah. I'm like, and so there are some patients where I'm like, okay, let me get the doctor to come in and repeat what I just said. And so really building the faith with those patients was a tricky one for me, because I was like, but I know the answer, and they just don't want to hear it. So that was a little bit of a blow, right? Because you work so hard for the certification, and you train so hard to know the answers to these questions, and then they don't trust you because you're not a doctor. Yeah. So every now and again you'd get those, and that one was tough. But first time multifocal presbyopes was a tough one. Aside from everything, if I could avoid fitting any contact lens, It would be a first-time multifocal patient.
Yeah. Well, your optician friends would say the first-time progressive wear is probably their least favorite as well.
Yeah. And what's funny is I know that I'm a latent hyperope, so my first multifocal prescription, whew, I feel so sorry for that doctor. I'm so sorry for him already.
That's funny. It's interesting, and it's a great clinical pearl because it's in practice management pearl rather than a clinical pearl, but on helping to build trust in your team. Because not just the doctor. Sometimes when you bring in an associate doctor, you have patients who don't want to see the associate even though they are a doctor. And so how you build trust in your team works both directions. And so knowing that, I always try to be very cognizant of reinforcing the expertise that my team has with the patient, so that next time they come, they know I'm going back to Taylor, right?
Yeah.
Reinforcing that, hey, what Taylor saw was spot on. Her recommendations are spot on. I'm going to have to work with her to continue, that and continue the plan. That way, I'm not taking anything off of you. I'm building you back up, and it's to the patient, but it's to the rest of the team as well. Because they knew you as Taylor when you first started the practice.
Right.
You're parking in the wrong spot and not sure where to go. And maybe
I
they know
actually
you
did park in the wrong spot my first week.
Yeah.
So you're spot on there.
It happens.
Yeah.
And, so it's sometimes a little bit different as Taylor with the additional responsibilities. I grew up in the practice that I now own, so it was weird coming in as a doctor working, now leading the team that I used to work side by side with when I was a teenager. They had a tough time with that. So I think that building trust all the way around is important, and something to proactively look at doing within the practiing.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, but I agree with you on the communication part. It's they being a good solver of problems, I've learned, really means being a good asker of questions and listening to the answers. And slowing down in that aspect is something I'm still struggling with, but I think I'm doing a lot better.
Well, and I think that something that this goes for life, but there are so many different personality styles out there, and I don't think you realize it until you're locked in an exam room with somebody. And you're like, I cannot figure out how to get these answers out of you, or like, I can't figure out how to stop the answers. They're too much, or there's so many personality types out there that it was almost really like, not a life lesson, but a kind of a life lesson per se. Yeah. Like, oh, maybe, okay, so this person's like perfectly pleasant, but they come off as kind of abrupt because they've had this issue for 10 years and they're irritated, right? And so you learn a lot about people when you're dealing more intimately with them in a capacity of an NCLE versus that. And the doctor that I worked with did a really great job at introducing me and making sure that they felt safe in my hands. And I kind of compared myself to a dental hygienist. I said, sometimes you go and get your teeth cleaned and you don't see the dentist. And he said, that's a good thing. Because if you see the dentist, that means the dental hygienist saw a problem. I said, so sometimes you see me and you don't see the doctor. And that's a great thing because that means everything looks great. Sometimes you see me and I got to go get them because I'm a little concerned about something. And they kind of, something about that being like, oh, if I see the doctor, that means there's something wrong. They'd be like, am I seeing the doctor today? I'm like, nope, you're great. And they'd be happy. So reframing it too helped.
I like that a lot. I like that a whole lot. So let's use that to jump to your new world now, because you're no longer in a practice.
Yeah.
You now work for CooperVision, putting all of these skill sets to test. And I think your role is a very important role and kind of a unique one in the contact lens field space. So tell us exactly what that is and what it really means, what you do.
Yeah, so I joined CooperVision as a myopia management specialist. I am on a team of about 25 of us across the U.S., and my job is just to talk about myopia management and myopia control. It's definitely different because before I was working with patients, and when I was working with patients, I was very, very, very passionate about myopia control and myopia management. That really became my favorite treatment to talk about. That became my favorite treatment to see. I saw probably 90 to 90% kids on my schedule when I was seeing patients, and that really became my passion. So getting the opportunity to work for CooperVision, where I was helping doctors to extend, an extension of my passion into their practice, is really kind of what the exciting part of that was for me. So rather than seeing patients on a day-to-day basis, I go in and I talk to doctors, I talk to staff members, see what they need from me. It is an educational role still. Before I was educating patients, now I'm educating staff on how to educate patients, and just really trying to further the reach of that. So a little bit different capacity,
Yep.
but still able to kind of work with patients indirectly by knowing what's going on in the practices and what doctors need help with and what staff needs help with.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's a really important role. I don't think that the knowledge, at least within the practice side on myopia management, is lacking. I think that there's a challenge to communicate appropriately to patients,
and
right?
That's a lot of what I do.
Yep.
So
and you hit it perfectly, right? There's lots of different patients, lots of different personalities, and lots of different backgrounds. And so depending on where you are and who your patient mix is, you may have a very patient base that's aware of it, or one that you're the first time introducing this whole new concept that is important that they may not have ever heard.
Right. And that is pretty much what I do. So when I was working in a practice, I was seeing patients, but a lot of what I did, like on a schedule, but what I also did was some of these myopia management counseling. So a doctor would call me in, say, hey, Taylor, I've got this patient. This patient is a first-time myope and getting their first pair of, we're talking about getting their first pair of glasses today, but I want you to educate the parents about myopia management. So I would take the parent into the room, and I was doing this even before I became an NCLE. So really becoming an NCLE just kind of enhanced this conversation for me, learning more, kind of the behind the scenes stuff. But I would talk about what is myopia, why do we care about it, what are the risks, what are the pros and cons of each of these treatments, how can we move forward, what's the best for your child, because there is not one treatment in this entire world for anything that works perfectly for every patient. So, how can we, and I really would work on personalizing that treatment for them. So now on the CooperVision side, I'm basically teaching these staff members, and sometimes the doctors aren't really sure how to have the conversation with patients or how to make it not last 20 minutes, how to make it short and sweet. And that's where I come in. I work with the doctors and the staff to educate about myopia management in an efficient but full way. And it's really rewarding because I know that rather than me sitting in a practice talking to a couple of patients per day about it, I'm helping other staff members talk to a couple of patients per day about it. So it's like a pyramid. It just more and more people are talking about it, and it's so rewarding.
Yeah, that is super cool. And even as far as I'm not sure how much you're involved, but the Myopia Collective that I know Cooper did with AOA, just to have the information readily available for not just for doctors, but for the whole team to understand what new research is, what the current strategies are, and really how best to support our young patients.
Yeah, the Myopia Collective is really cool. It's something that they really put their full force behind it. Partner with the AOA and make non-branded myopia information. There's articles, there's things for parents, there's coloring sheets for kids, there's a little bit of something for everybody in the Myopia Collective. So it's one of the things that, like I said, I really love about CooperVision is like they don't just do it, they do it. And they really put their whole heart into myopia management and myopia control, and it's been something it's rewarding. It's great.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. And for those who are just listening to this, you're really missing out because Taylor has had nothing but the biggest smile I've seen in a long time throughout our entire conversation. So you can really see the passion that she has behind it, and the breadth and the involvement of everybody involved in eye care. And it's neat and rewarding to see. So as we wrap up, Taylor, for those who are listening, maybe they're a doctor with staff, maybe you're a staff member, what are the next steps if somebody's considering looking at taking NCLE, getting NCLE certified?
Yeah. So there's a couple of different books that you can study with. I think there's two main ones. The one that I preferred was, I don't know if we can link it somewhere, but the one I preferred was a brown book, and it had CDs that explained the answers and the test questions in the back, like the review questions. So I really liked that. That would be the next step, is just getting that book and identifying the person that you want to be that person for you as a provider. Who is the person that you want to work with? Because I really did work closely with the the doctors, and we had to make sure that working together was going to work for us, and it really did, and it was great, because I'm the one seeing your patients. So find a staff member who sees patient care the same way you do as a provider, and train that person, work with that person, answer the person's questions, make sure you're really available, and open for them, and pull them in when you see cool stuff. If you think there's somebody who's like maybe interested, start bringing them in the exam room, show them stuff, be like, hey, look through the slit lamp at this, and you're going to get to see something cool. And even if it's just SPK looks really cool when you don't know what it is. So even if it's something small, right? Find ways to get their, if they're not quite ready to get their toes wet, just give them a little splash, right? To kind of help get them driven to want to be in the room with you. That would be kind of my next thing. And it's kind of what I did, right? Like I spent about a year making sure that contact lenses are really something that I wanted to dedicate my career to, and they were. And there's a lot of things that I think my last thing I really want to say on it is that there's a lot of benefits to having an NCLE, whether you're a business owner, whether you're a doctor, whether you're the person taking the NCLE exam itself, right? Like as a practice owner, it would decrease your risk of turnover because you now have a staff member who's NCLE certified, who has their own schedule of patients, and who's invested in your practice. They're not just collecting a paycheck every 2 weeks, but they're now invested in the success of your patients in your practice because your patients are now their patients. So there's a turnover thing. If you want to look at it from a doctor perspective, instead of having to see those follow-ups at the end of the day, you can now see other types of appointment, to increase your revenue per patient for the day, because Taylor's over here seeing your contact lens follow-ups, so you don't have to put that on your schedule. You can do other things with that. So there's really something for everyone involved that's a benefit to having an NCLE in your practice. I mean, it benefits everyone.
Yep.
It truly does.
So I think so too. It's healthcare is the best way for healthcare to be delivered is through a team approach, and this really just elevates the entire team. So I super appreciate you jumping on and sharing your experience and clearly your passion, and look forward to hopefully teaching another NCLE prep course with you again, because that was awesome. I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot. I took away with my own notes and just little insights that you shared from a very young but fruitful career of having done this. So thank you for everything you've done.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me here today. It's been, like I said, becoming an NCLE, it's a passion of mine, and kind of spreading that passion and helping more people become NCLE certified. It's a passion project for me, for sure.
Yep. Love it. Thanks, Taylor.
All right. Thank you.